Music psychology is a diverse field. It consists of a broad array of disciplines that are focused on explaining the human experience of music. Several disciplines provide scientific approaches that help to illuminate the performance, practice, and effect of music in areas such as acoustics, physics, philosophy, biology, anthropology, sociology, and psychology. In addition, much of the work in music disciplines draws upon frameworks that originate in other fields, such as music education, music performance, and music therapy. Through most of our history, the scholarly study of music has had two aspects. Music has been considered a branch of mathematics for studying the universe. Scientists from Pythagoras to Kepler have studied music. However, singing and instrumental performance, or the practical application of music, has been considered a much lower level of study. It is not that performance has not been appreciated, but that it was considered more skill-based than a serious academic pursuit. We can still see this today, of course, with intellectual studies in music considered to be more valuable than performance studies. Dating back at least to as far as the ancient Greek, and most likely well before this, the study of music was justified on the basis that it led to truth and understanding of the universe. Everything could be understood through studying music. The belief was that cosmic music embodies true harmony, while music performance was an imperfect approximation of true harmony. The affect of music was considered to be a type of natural magic that had the possibility of leading to truth, but could also lead to misconceptions. As an example, this slide shows a summary of Flude's theory of universal music. The interval between the element of earth and the highest heaven is considered as a double octave, thus showing the two extremes of existence. It signifies that the highest heaven, the sun, and the earth have the same time, their difference being pitch. The sun is the lower octave of the highest heaven, and the earth the lower octave of the sun. Now, we're not going to spend time studying all these different theories, but I just wanted to illuminate how throughout the history of the world is that really we've kind of looked at music as really being able to show some of the secrets of the universe. Now, this type of thinking did change in Western academic history during the Enlightenment. Okay? Of course, this greatly impacted the study of music. Prior to this time, religious belief in the supernatural were the primary sources of knowledge. However, with the Enlightenment, reason came into play, and eventually experimentation. For us, this has relevance in two ways. First, music became viewed as a fine art rather than a science, because music was no longer seen as the key to understanding everything. Now, having said that, I do want to emphasize is that music was not viewed in the same way as we view music now, is that music was viewed predominantly as we would see music theory or music acoustics. That was the area of study that was really an academic pursuit. Okay? Second, the study of the mind became a serious topic of study. Throughout most of Western history, emotions, expectations, and the quality of sensations as references to music only happened in poetic context. Now, studying what caused those emotions in an objective way is an appropriate subject for science. Beginning in the Enlightenment, philosophers advocated for a scientific approach if one really wished to learn something. During the 19th century, psychology became an independent discipline from philosophy, and the study of music was part of psychology from its emergence as a discipline. A central idea in music psychology was that human behavior could be studied through observation, testing, and measurement using scientific methods. What became evident very quickly is that the study of music would need to draw upon many disciplines. Your book provides a model of the interdisciplinary nature of music psychology on page 4. I think the primary reason that is referred to as music psychology, even though it draws on many other disciplines, is because music primarily takes place in the mind. And of course, the psychology is the study of the mind from an individual perspective. While we study the acoustical properties of music in acoustics and the artifacts of music in archaeology, it is primarily an activity that takes place in the mind and among people. Now I'm going to take a few minutes to briefly outline the history of modern music psychology. The earliest known work on modern music psychology is On the Sensation of Tone as a Physiological Basis for the Perception of Music by Helmholtz, a German empirical thinker of the time. The earliest works in music psychology focused on linking psychology and physics, what we know today as psychoacoustics. One focus of this early work was to identify the relationship between the physical meaning of sound with its perception. Carl Seashore is considered the father of music psychology. He was one of the first researchers to focus exclusively on music. He was very productive and studied a wide array of areas in music, including aesthetics, hearing, perception, performance, vibrato, and so on. His biggest contribution to the field, however, is that he laid an introductory view of music psychology that has been very influential. In the 1920s and 30s, research in the psychology of music became influenced by Gestalt Perception, which holds its basic tenet that the perception of the whole is different from perceiving constituent parts. Studies in this era were primarily in two directions, focusing on the cognitive as well as the affective responses in music. The focus in cognitive study was on how music dimensions, such as phrases, are grouped together and what perceptual factors impact their mental organization. The focus in affective responses was on studying those phenomena that influenced musical preferences. In general, emotional responses and preferences are highly individualized, depending upon the individual socialization factors and listening conditions. In conjunction with these areas of studies, an active line of physiological studies developed as well. Often, studies of this nature examined heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, perspiration, or other bodily functions. In general, these studies have revealed that responses are related to the perception and interpretation by listeners. Much of this research has moved from examining the effects of particular musical features towards examining the effects of self-selected music or in combination with verbal responses. The recognition that responses to music are highly individualized and dependent upon listeners' personal preference led to an emphasis of research on aesthetic responses. These theories have focused on the expectations that listeners have as they are in the process of listening to music. An important researcher in this tradition is Leonard Meyer, and he proposes that the degree to which expectations are met or delayed creates a sense of emotional tension and release. The balance of these extremes creates the strongest degree of meaning in listeners. Now, proponents of this view are usually called absolute expressionists because they believe that music is primarily communicated through intrinsic musical elements such as melody, rhythm, harmony, and form, rather than extrinsic factors such as the title of a piece or what that piece is about. Now, this model has generated considerable empirical support from studies in cognitive neuroscience. The most influential area in the last 40 years has been in brain science. The work of brain science has interested researchers not only for its value in studying music acquisition and learning, but also because music is a robust stimulus for brain activity. Brain imaging research has primarily focused on music perception, learning in general, music learning, and biomedical applications of music. Recent developments in brain science have provided for viewing physiological changes in the process of brain activation. This is based on measuring changes in electrical activity and blood flow. Music studies have interested brain researchers for two reasons. First, studies of brain activity have the potential to reveal much about music learning. Second, because music involves complex processing, it has much to offer researchers about how the brain works in general. Early research on the brain led researchers to believe that some areas of the brain were music centers. Now it is understood that brain activation is widely distributed across the brain during music processing. Brain research has impacted practically every other area of study in music psychology. Another area of focus in music psychology has been on comparing perception of music with that of verbal language. This comparison makes sense since both are auditory-based, are vital for human society, and have rule-based systems. However, there are differences. The organizational structure is different, with pitch being more vital in music and vowels and consonants being more vital in language. One difference is the specificity of meaning, which is critical in verbal language and not necessarily the case in music. Also, while both are rule-based systems, breaking rules in verbal language is considered to be incorrect and possibly meaningless. Breaking the rules of musical grammar are not absolute and often result in creating new systems of expression. Current avenues of research are considering language in terms of symbol systems and considering comparing the processing of music with other symbol systems, such as numbers, drawing, and so on. Music as language would then be based on the ability to think in sound, to perceive relationships, and generate rules based on expectations. In sum, music psychology is a wide-ranging and diverse field. The history of the field shows there is much value in using the scientific method to investigate important questions in music. Now, through the history of music psychology, there has been a development of technology that's allowed for many advances and made very precise measurement possible in studying acoustics, perception, body mechanics, performance, emotion, music preferences, and so on. Now, in addition to the information that it provides us, the scientific method also provides an important framework for thinking. The scientific method begins with a theory that is based on pre-existing knowledge. We can then use that pre-existing knowledge to develop a hypothesis or a question that is testable based on that pre-existing knowledge. Then we can make observations and collect and evaluate that data. In the scientific method, we attempt to make observations that are objective and generalizable. That means that we attempt to make judgments that are not based on the person making the observations, at least to the extent possible, and try to reach conclusions that can be verified across situations. The scientific method holds much potential for us to learn about the results from previous research, as well as providing a framework for us to pose important questions.